and welcome back to the LovePod Podcast. On today's episode, we are recapping episode 10 of Love is Blind Season 6 with a special guest, Kenny Barnes from Season 1 of Love is Blind. If you aren't already subscribed to the LovePod, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our weekly Love is Blind recaps. Let's get into the episode.
Hey everybody, welcome as usual to the LovePod. We are back. That's twice this week because we have some recaps with a very special guest. And before we get into the recaps, Jordan and I are here, of course. We have Kenny Barnes from Season 1 of Love is Blind. How are you today, Kenny? Welcome to the show.
No, I'm doing great and really excited to be on. Obviously, it's always fun connecting with people, whether it's virtually or in person. So really appreciate y'all having me.
And it's been quite a few years. It's been 4 years since your season of the show at least premiered. So how do you feel about the current season versus when you were on?
Yeah, so great question. And for people that haven't really followed the show and I guess additional context to Season 1, it was actually filmed almost 6 years ago to date.
Oh my gosh.
It took over 2 years to actually release it. So that's one thing we always talk about with Season 1 is like we waited for so long for it to come out. So much life had happened right between end of filming, other relationships had come up, and just like Season 6's experience right now is that lag right in between filming and also like real life goes on, and then all of a sudden it gets released. When people get in other relationships, and my wife can attest to this, we were 7 months into our relationship at that time, and I had to completely erase our dating history. I had to erase everything. So it was really bizarre. But yeah, it's pretty special because obviously this one takes place in Charlotte. Side note is when Season 1 came out, I actually relocated to Charlotte. So I didn't actually have the true experience of it actually being released in real time in the city I filmed it in. So it's actually been kind of special because obviously getting reconnect with some of the people that are on Season 6. But also to be a part of the community because Charlotte's got such a great community. So that's been a really cool thing to be a part of.
That is awesome. And it seems like you guys all have a bond, even other seasons of no matter where you're located, connecting over this experience, whether it be a trauma bond or a positive thing, everybody's really tight, which is awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, it's as cliche as it sounds. It's an experiment, right? That unless you actually have gone through it, you really, really can't, fully explain. But yeah, I mean, that's something I think all of us at Season 1 through 6, we can all, kind of attest to. It's a very special, somewhat difficult process, right, to go through. And obviously, I think Season 6 is, seeing that right now, especially the most recent episodes. Everything kind of comes to a head. There's a lot of context missing, like always, but that wouldn't be reality TV without it. But yeah, I mean, it's really cool to watch, and obviously the bonds that you have with these people is pretty strong.
Do you have any advice for the fans that are coming really hard, I think now more than any other season before, to help explain the dynamics and maybe ease the way for other cast members?
Yeah, there's a lot that contributes to it. Obviously, right? There's so much that happens behind the scenes, and that Season 1. It was the first of its kind, right? So like we always say as, all the Season 1 cast members, we didn't know what we were walking into, right? So we truly were walking in blindly. So a lot of the content that was captured, it could be a little bit more organic in the sense that like we didn't know what to expect, right? So like as far as, the first few days in the pods, the whole world didn't know what a dating pod was. So like,
That's true.
So now in Season 6, which I love that they're showcasing the pods, right, and the interactions in them, because as you reflect right back to Season 1, almost 2, 3, and 4, there was very little context that happened in the pods as far as how the relationships built. I can personally say, like, I'm pretty sure if I recall, Kelly and I probably had like 3 conversations in the pod, and it was like, all right, you're getting engaged. Like, it was like, how did this happen, right? So yeah, so the one thing I would say though to people, like, just always come with an open mind. Obviously, people are going to be painted in not the best way, just based off of certain things that could absolutely be taken out of context. And it's just always a good reminder that we're just human beings, right? And I think most people have really good intentions, and it's just honestly based off of the time that something was captured, and then how that's portrayed could be completely different.
Oh, sure.
Out there.
I was just talking to somebody today about your season and how long of a period it's been between. And is
Sure.
so-and-so still with so-and-so? And is Jessica still single? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, no, she's married with a baby. No, he has a new wife. Yeah, no, those two are still together. And even from the time that you guys film, like you said, till it comes out is such a long period of time. And we always like to lead with love and not be on, as much as we enjoy the drama of the show, be on the kinder side of things. So trying to keep you guys supported as opposed to what goes on in maybe some of the Reddit groups or chat groups, I think is really important, and important for fans to remember too.
No, for sure.
Is it true that you guys, when you filmed, were in bunk beds in like a warehouse?
Yeah, so I think I'm past my NDA now, so I can say kind of whatever.
I hope so.
I think there's an ongoing lawsuit, but I'm not a part of that, so I can definitely speak to this. Going back to the show didn't really exist, right? So like production, they didn't really know what they were doing either. Season 1 was very much the guinea pigs. That's not a like, oh, we're propping ourselves up. It's definitely not something that, makes us better. It's actually the opposite. The first 3 nights we slept on correctional facility beds. And we actually were in a studio just south of Atlanta in Peachtree City. And it was actually really close to like, what's the name of the studio? It's Pineville Studios is the name of it. But either way, so we actually stayed in air conditioned trailers. So, like movie set trailers. But when you walked in, it was just flat bunks with like slightest mattress. So like it was a correctional facility mattress. It wasn't, anything that was plush. And I don't know if there's any truth to it, but we felt like it was done deliberately. It was to break us a little bit, right? As far as our comfort zone. Obviously if we were sleep deprived, and we filmed literally like 16 to 20 hours, depending on how long that we all agreed to stay in the pods, right? And have cameras on us. But yeah, between that, long days, and then obviously not having comfortable beds to sleep in. I was telling Vince and Julian about this last weekend. I was like, it literally was just one of those things where you just had to show up. My drink of choice was Bailey's and coffee because it was like enough of a upper, but also enough to like kind of mellow myself out. Because if I had showed up sober, seriously, like if I showed up sober, like I don't know who I would have been. And it goes both ways, right? It's like some people didn't have a vice. Like some people ate a lot of food, which obviously is going to make you exhausted. Other guys that ended up not getting, showcased like every season's gone through, just drank a lot. So it was just a really tough thing for people to deal with, psychologically. But yeah, so we did sleep on correctional facility beds for the first 3 nights. And as we were told, it was because I think it was Lauren saw a cockroach on the female side.
Oh no!
It was the timeout period. Like, all right, we're gonna move you all to a hotel. So yeah.
Oh God, yeah. I'd be, if they didn't move you, and I was there, I would have been out. I'll pay you whatever fee you want me to pay, but please. We do have a fan question from Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, which I love that name. What are your thoughts on the UCAN Foundation? And for anybody that doesn't know, that is the Unscripted Cast Advocacy Network. I knew I wasn't going to get that.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. I fully support, right, that, people that go into reality TV, there's got to be another layer of support and assistance. I think from the front end, I think, giving people something, right, like a support group to lean on so they know that they're not kind of just blindly going out there, right, and into the world of production, and especially in reality TV, we're not professionals, or at least, we shouldn't be, trying to seek a professional career in acting, right, or any type of production. So yeah, I think in principle, it's a phenomenal, idea. So hopefully that they continue to get backing, because I think it's definitely a void that's needed in the industry for sure.
That was a great question. Thank you, Bunny Hugs. And then last question before we get into the recap is, if you were coming off of Love is Blind filming back then and had seen the opportunities for things, spinoffs like Perfect Match or any other reality shows, was that something that you would have considered moving on in the reality TV sphere?
So that's a great question as well. If my, now wife was not in the picture at the time, there's a really good chance I would have. I know at the time that, I fortunately got a really good, edit, so to speak, if people want to say that. I did feel like I was about as true to myself as I possibly could have been. So I would say that I didn't really give production too much, right, leeway to spin things in a certain way. I'm a very intentional person. So like, I walked through the process, treat it with respect, but also just wanted to make sure, first and foremost, that like I was representing my friends and family as best as possible. But with that being said, like had my now wife not been in the picture, 100%, you have to capitalize on opportunities. It's such a unique thing to go through, right? And so to get that notoriety in that moment of time, I would feel like you'd be kind of shorting yourself, or anyone would be shorting themselves if you were given the opportunity and then others, came about. So I definitely would have pursued it, but it wasn't in the cards for me. That wasn't in.
That's okay.
Wasn't in God's plan for me. Yep.
There's plenty of shows that don't require dating. So maybe you and your wife will join in on an amazing race or a cooking show or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm fully on board. If anyone that's on the casting group for the challenge, I'd love to do the challenge. I think mental toughness games, physical toughness. I mean, that's my background. I played college football. So like regimented, anything that's regimented, anything that requires mental and physical tests, I'm all for it. And side note, which is actually pretty wild, a guy I went to Wofford College with actually won the season of Survivor as well as the challenge.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So pretty small world, but so Chris Underwood's his name, and he's a phenomenal guy. He's married.
I love Chris. I love Chris so much.
Yep. He's solid through and through. He's exactly right as how he's portrayed on TV. He's just a hustler. He's super sharp. But I'll never forget, like the first time I met him was he walked on to the Wofford football team, and that was our first interaction. And he literally is exactly the way that he is on TV. Obviously, a little maturity's happened over the years, but yeah, he works his tail off. And that was one thing that immediately stuck out to me. And he's carried that through with his life. So very proud of him.
He's had a really rough season. His last season, they just came at him so hard, and he really deserved, if anyone, to win that one. But that's a whole nother show and a whole nother recap.
Sorry for the tangent.
No, that's okay. I love Chris, and I'm a very long time challenge fan. So that's awesome. Very small world. Tell him we said hello.
No, we'll do.
And hi, Vince. We have a shout out to you from Vince. He can only stay on for 5 minutes, so maybe he'll recap the episode with us from the chat. And you are a king. So speaking of Vince and season 6, Jordan, do you want to get into the recap? You're going to have to come up off of mute to get into it, though.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay, yeah, but I'm excited because we left off this last episode 9 with this whole kind of confrontation between Laura and Jeremy, and then we kind of started this episode 10 with Jeremy and his mom talking about that whole situation with Sarah Ann. And I mean, I guess they get into it a little bit more later, but I don't know. What did you think about the conversation with his mom?
I'll let you go first, Kenny.
Yeah, I mean, it's so first off, it's so difficult when parents get into the fold, and you can start connecting the dots, right? Just from like, all right, which parents showed up, and that's one thing to always keep in mind too, where you're asking like, is there any advice you could give to viewers, right, and the fans?
Right.
One is just having a lot of empathy for like when you're getting family, whether it's mom, dad, right, whoever's in the picture, siblings, cousins, it doesn't matter. Like that's a huge leap of faith. And so obviously that moment, I'm sure what was, actually showcased, I'm sure there was so much more to it. And regardless of how the storylines, right, have unfolded with Jeremy and with Laura and all the cast members, that's one thing to keep in mind. But yeah, as far as that, interaction, if we're looking at just through the lens of what's been produced, I would say that it just didn't seem like, and again, take it just through the lens of production. It didn't seem like Jeremy was being super honest about like everything that had transpired. I would say there was definitely I think he was very deliberate, right, with things that he did say, and he was very deliberate with things that he didn't say, because what you include and what you exclude is actually that's what bakes the cake, right? And so obviously he spun it in a way that seemed a little bit more easy for his mom to digest, and so I think that left her more optimistic, like, okay, you'll figure this out, like maybe I'll have a daughter-in-law. When back to the matter, as a viewer, it's like, well, little do you know, Mom, like your son kind of screwed the pooch a little bit. Yeah. And like, he's got some apologizing to do to step up and honestly just, I think, take accountability for what he did. As I was watching it with my wife, and that's why I said, I was like, regardless of the full context, this is a moment that whether you're Jeremy on this season, or if you're one of the other men, if something doesn't go right, regardless of what actually happened, the sooner you come out right and just address like, yep, I could have dealt with this a little bit better. That's how you can resolve the issue. And there's still going to be people, right, they're going to disagree with you, but that's just life, right? I mean, you're not going to please everyone, but yeah, that was the one thing I took away from that, where it's like, all right, I don't know if you're being 100% honest with your mom, and I don't know if you're being 100% honest with yourself. And so it's like, well, you keep just digging yourself this hole. Maybe production's just really good because they've got 6 years, right, of practice. But yeah, that was my take on the interaction there.
Something that I wrote down was, he said nothing inappropriate happened. And I'm thinking the whole time, the whole situation was inappropriate. I mean, like you said, taking accountability. I didn't feel that happened. And I understand not wanting mama to have all the full details on the situation and get into the nitty gritty, no matter if something actually happened beyond talking or not. But it felt like a little bit of whitewashing the situation to paint himself in a good light the entire episode, which we'll get into further, of course. But that was just my take on it. I agree with you about accountability for sure.
Yeah. The principle of the matter, right, is just, that situation could have been avoided, should have been avoided. No shit on Jeremy, right, or anyone that gets in situations like that, because things happen, right? Life happens, but that all comes back to just the sooner you can step up and just say, hey, you know what, let me talk about it, one-on-one with Laura, but then also come out and make a statement. Just be like, hey, that if I could go back, right, and do it again, like I definitely would do it differently. So maybe he does that down the road, but that would be the only
thing. We don't know yet. It doesn't seem like it, but maybe we'll leave that door open.
100%.
All right, Jordan, what's next on the list?
Okay. All right, so we have a few different scenes. They all kind of run together in my head, but I know we have a couple of different scenes with Amy and Johnny, and I just want to get them out of the way because I feel like there's not as much to talk about with them. Not that they're not interesting, but there's not as much to talk about. But we have a scene with them kind of like building furniture, which was cute. Again, it's all very cute, right, but all very surface level, except, and I've seen a lot of stuff about this in our Facebook group, or several posts about Amy and her dad, and that being such a cute and like heartfelt moment, and I really liked that.
Yeah,
absolutely. What do you think of them as a couple?
I think they're as solid and steady, right, as this season's had. That's not a original statement. I think most people that have seen it at least paid somewhat attention. They're a kind of a shoo-in, it seems like. I felt like I could relate as much, right, with them as any of the other couples, just because regardless of what my whole story is, that's a whole other show of what actually was going on behind the scenes. But yeah, I mean, they don't seem dramatic, right? They seem very intentional, right, with being just supportive of each other, and yeah, like it's just living life, right, like as they normally would. So if it's building furniture one day, right, or meeting her father, she seems like just a super sweet person. They both treat each other, right, just so respectfully. So yeah, there's really no surprises with them, right? It's just kind of like, all right, so we got Amy and Johnny. It's like, all right, well, here we go. Here's a warm and comforting moment from them, and then they pan to the next dramatic thing.
Yeah. Then on to the next drama. I think they got a very similar edit to you and Kelly at the time. I mean, It seems like we kind of saw you guys a little bit, and it was like, okay, they're fine. Moving on to the next ones. But you said it was a little bit different behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, it's because of, and I do attribute a lot of this to just season one. We didn't know how the show would be formatted. Right.
Sure.
So technically, Love is Blind didn't exist when we filmed. So it was actually the Atlanta Singles Project, and they've probably carried that name. Kinetic has probably carried that name for all the cities
okay.
they filmed in. But it is important to remind everyone, like, we didn't know the show was going to get purchased. So, none of that stuff, like, we could never see, like, okay, down the road, this could be produced this way. Like, there was a time where we all thought we were getting punked. Like, when we didn't actually have the we didn't have the reveal yet. Like, there were parts where we're like, maybe we're getting played and it's like artificial intelligence.
Fair enough.
Yeah, not joking, but yeah, it's like just I won't go into more detail, but yeah, like very similar edits to me and Kelly. But the things that we just focused on, which we did, we treat each other with respect. If I went back right and did it, 1,000 times over, I would probably handle it. I would hope I could handle it exactly the same way. We had mutual discussion, on several occasions about just, hey, we're going to get through this process. The contract, right? So, you can kind of, fold into this too. We didn't know what rights we had. So we signed a contract and we were being told you have to get to the altar. So we're just kind of showing up, right, and being the best versions of ourselves as we can, and being, we'll go through the dates, we'll go to the dance classes, we'll go to the cooking classes, we'll interact with other couples. But yeah, we were essentially just drama free because we knew, like, hey, we're going to get to the altar. That was still such a built up moment. I mean, as anyone would imagine, it is still a wedding day and you're still having your groomsmen there, and she had her bridesmaids there. Insert family again, right? So family and friends get there. So yes, surface level, you could look at it and be like, all right, we all are acting, but 48 days into an experiment like that, it was as emotionally exhausting, right, and physically exhausting as anything I've ever done, for sure. So it's wild to think about.
And you two knew ahead of time that you were not going to get married, correct?
We figured, we started having there started to be a disconnect probably like the second day of the romantic getaway. It's just, and it truly is just, it comes down to living in reality. You can form a great relationship with someone, right, if you have undivided attention and you literally have no physical distraction. So when you're just speaking to someone through a wall, as everyone likes to talk about, and you don't have TV, you don't have friends, you don't have your sphere of influence, right, to distract you, you can get really close with people really quickly. However, when you're around someone, you pick up on tendencies. You also see the follow through or lack thereof, right? I mean, proof is in the action, right? Words only go so far. So there were a lot of things that we aligned on that definitely didn't match when we actually got in front of each other. And that's again, that's personal, it's professional. But yeah, we just started to have a kind of a stray away from that moment, and then obviously we didn't get married. But yeah, I mean the crazier part about it is that production, the last like 5 days, we're trying to convince Kelly and me that we were saying, oh, well, like maybe I need to marry this person. So that's where so that's where, again, there's manipulation there, where it's like, okay, well, like, are you not thinking about this enough? Like, are you sure, like, that you're not gonna propose? And Kelly, up until the last day, I remember she called me. I was actually leaving there's moments in life, right, you never forget. So I'm driving back to the apartment building that we were all staying at, and it's probably like 11 o'clock at night. I was leaving a client function, and she was freaking out. She's like, are we not getting married tomorrow? I was like, no, like, we're not. She's like, okay, well, like, I just want to make sure, like, you're serious about that, because I had my exit interview with production today, and they were just telling me that you were saying, like, as if I was.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
They don't think you're going to talk.
It doesn't matter, right? Like, if they could insert enough doubt, right, and enough confusion, I think what they were holding on is it was another way, right, for them to spin the drama machine, right? And so they just wanted to see what would happen, and so that was why it was so tough for both of us, for all the factors, day of. But it's just, yeah, that whole moment, right, culminated with everything that we went through. Nothing but respect for her, nothing but respect for her, family and her friends. I felt the same way then as I do today. Just wish her nothing but the best.
Sure. I think everybody we don't know as far as this season, but everybody from prior seasons, even if they ended on bad terms, doesn't wish ill will on the other person in the relationship. Did
Right.
your families, were you able to give them a heads up that you weren't going to say yes at the altar? Is that genuine surprise?
So I kind of alluded to my mom that it wasn't real, and it was just because she was so invested. I think like she was invested regardless, and so and that's a whole I can never replace that support that I had from my mom, right? And she's that way for everything I've done, and both my parents are like that, but she was very like overly involved with it. So I did feel like I owed it to her that like you don't need to show up right the day of the wedding stressed out or
Sure.
expecting something that's not going to happen. So I was able to say enough to where she understood.
Okay.
But yeah, like my sisters, maybe they talked to my mom. Partially, I didn't really talk to too many of my friends about it, and obviously anyone else that we had to invite because they want friends and extended family to be there. But we also were scared of our contract obligations,
Yeah,
right? So like
that's
if
fair.
in a crazy world, right, where like my uncle was talking right off camera and someone heard it, those were legitimate concerns I had where it's like, well, what am I going to get?
Absolutely.
Am I going to get sued by Netflix? Like, I don't have the money for that. Even if my parents hired like our best, family attorneys, like it's just, I don't want to go that road. So yeah, I kept it very hush hush.
Okay.
I could, but yeah, I alluded to my mom like, hey, tomorrow's a big day. Just know that like on my wedding day, this would be different. And again, in different words, I was able to allude to like, hey, just know like I would be handling this differently. Like you would be in a different position, tomorrow than you currently are. Just like, oh, okay, like yeah,
Right.
That is fair enough. I would be afraid of that too.
Mhm.
All right, getting back to that recap, Jordan.
Yeah, and speaking of family, we get to meet Jimmy's family. Chelsea gets to meet Jimmy's family, and I loved his family personally. I thought that
Mhm.
they seemed like
Yeah.
the sweetest people. They reminded me so much of just like people in my family, just like good old Southern people, and I really liked them a lot.
They help win you over with Jimmy, I think, too. From
Mhm.
him getting that bad edit in the beginning, maybe, to seeing another side of him talking about Chelsea and meeting his family and his mom saying she can see the love between them. There's a lot more Team Jimmy in the Facebook group than there were previously. What were you thinking, Kenny?
Yeah. I mean, he's hitting home runs in the bottom of the ninth for sure. If you're a baseball fan, he came from nowhere. He's kind of slowly, I think, grown on people. And a lot of it could be editing, right? But jury's still out. But Jordan, to your point, in certain family, getting to know, right, like, all right, who raised him? What's his foundation like? What would your support system be? If you were Chelsea, I mean, and those are things I immediately go to where it's like, all right, despite how this relationship has unfolded, in this reality TV setting, he comes from a really good background, and they seem like kind-hearted, well-intentioned, right? Would go to bat for you if you were, in a time of need, type of people. So, and that's not to get too philosophical, but like that's what our world needs. Like we need more people like Jimmy's parents. So I was a big fan of them getting showcased like that. So if Jimmy, if you're watching this, your parents are gold, man, and hopefully we can get out and play golf, sometime soon too.
Oh my gosh, all the parents this season are incredible. And I don't know, the parents are like everyone's big fans. I never see really any dynamic otherwise. And I think it was Kwame's sister or somebody the year before who won, like, we do superlatives every year and won like favorite cast member. It wasn't even one of the actual main cast. So we love the families.
100%.
Yeah, everyone liked her. I do remember that. And then also another person that everybody is loving so far from these episodes is AD's mom.
Mm-hmm.
And that conversation that she had with AD and then also with Clay. I've seen a lot of really good things about that conversation.
Yeah, Kenny, what do you?
I totally agree. Yeah, totally agree with that. I had a video of Clay's rental boat company, Wave Sandy, because he's local. I actually had it pulled up. but it fell asleep. So yeah, now I get to fanboy on Clay and obviously the relationship with AD. They both just seem so genuine. I think that's the thing that sticks out most. And there's a lot of great qualities about them too. But yeah, just how genuine they are. Obviously a huge moment for AD to introduce her mother to Clay, because it doesn't seem like that's something that's happened, frequently in the past. But her mother specifically, you talk about someone that is just, it doesn't matter what's happened in her life, doesn't matter what happened with her, her marriage, right, with AD and her father. She's there to show up for her daughter. And so I thought that was really special. Where my mind always goes is like, all right, it's like what led during the filming of that? Because it's really important for people to know, like when that filming session was set up, it's probably like a 4 to 5 hour block of time. So, so curious to see how like that transpired, because, they're sitting down, they're asking questions, and I'm sure there was probably a lot of dead time. There's a lot of like, okay, like let's go change this position, and we'll sit down here and we'll have the same conversation. So for them to get that emotional, I think, authenticity out of her mom is like, that's a really special thing. So you can tell her mom cares, and that shines through regardless.
Oh yeah. And I think you can see so many similarities between AD and her mother. And I was wondering, when AD mentioned before Clay got there, he hasn't acknowledged the gift that she gave him. And Mama was real hesitant. And then it seemed like he won her over like that. And I'm thinking, what did they say in between that we didn't see for her to make such a shift? And really giving this great non-judgmental advice, because like you said, saying, their parents' relationships are different and those are their mistakes. Because I didn't catch when Clay was talking about his parents' divorce, that his parents were together for 25 years before they actually got divorced. So I'm thinking, I can see where he's coming from with being worried that he's going to repeat the mistakes of his father. And I'm like, wait a second, they didn't get divorced when you were young. It was 25 years together. So her really honing in on that with him, I think, is important, because like she said, you don't have to take on your parents' failures. Your relationship is your own. But AD saying that she would jump off a cliff without a parachute for Clay, little concerning, because that man, you're just both going to die. That man is not going to catch you. It's just physically not possible. So she has a lot of faith in him.
Yeah, there's idiosms, right? That sometimes it's like, all right, that one didn't hit. I'm the first person. Like I use a lot of analogies, and like I'm a quantity, not quality guy. So like I'll just, whether it's dad jokes, right, whether it's analogies, I'm quick to say them, but then like 2 out of 10 hit. So like I totally get that. It probably wasn't her best analogy, but like obviously the intention behind it was great. And, that was one thing that I was just curious, like we just talked about, is like, all right, it's like production was definitely influencing the direction of it, because it really is important for people to understand, like it is not, you get comfortable with cameras around, but if you're not a trained actor or actress, it's different. And so, there are, especially when the family gets involved, because you as, part of the cast, like you get a little bit numb to that situation. It becomes very fluid. But then, your friends get involved or your parents get involved, and they're like, looking over here, looking over there. So that's why I was very impressed that, like, all right, so they not only were they able to get her mom to focus on like, hey, these are talking points, right, in their, dating pod experience and now post pod experience, for them to connect on that. It's fascinating to me to like see how that would have, played out by production to them.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of that. I mean, we don't get any of it on our side. We just think everything is as we see it.
100%.
It's actually amazing to me how people at this point, and I guess I know people are still new to the show, still new to reality TV. I guess everybody's coming in at different times, but it's still amazing to me to see on social media how people will be like, for instance, there was a post that I think I declined in the Facebook group today that was like, was asking why Clay got up and walked out in the middle of the conversation. They were like, it was so random. And I just thought to myself, how do they not realize at this point that this is all so pieced together, you know what I mean? And produced, but I understand people are still new to it, but it still blows my mind a little bit.
I'll throw a random percentage out there, but if it's helpful, it's just context. So I would say 3% of just things that were showcased of just Kelly and Maya's relationship, 3% of what was filmed was part of that.
Okay.
There's
So very little.
Yeah.
There's so much footage, like, and some of it's disappointing. Some of it's like, you're indifferent. But there were a lot of things that, weren't showcased. And it goes like this for every season because there's only so much, right, they can fit into the storyline and the character development that they're trying to portray. And most of it's consistent, right? And that's one thing I always remind people too, is like, a lot of those dramatic moments, some people are there for that, right? Like some people want to be part of the drama. But they're going to get the most of whatever you're willing to give them. So yeah, that's one thing that I always want to remind people though, is that regardless of the stuff that is portrayed, there's so much, like it's almost impossible to try to explain to people. Like there's so much missing for like even the relationships on the guy's side, right? Like the camaraderie that we had, and I know that's referenced a lot. There's just so much missing for like why we were so close, right? And like why the women were so close. So yeah, who knows how long they sat there and talked? Who knows, production got in her ear and was like, hey, like he's really worried about, his family's, his mom and dad's, divorce, and that had a huge impact on him. I'm sure in some way, shape, or form that was brought up. And then it's like, all right, exit Clay. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Do you have any one particular moment that stands out you wish would have aired from your filming?
There's a couple. It does go back to, I wish that they showcased the development on both sides of the male and female sides. There were so many moments of, we would go through a 16-hour day of filming, right? And this includes everyone, right? So this is before people started figuring out that they didn't have a match. So, you went home. But, we would all kind of rally together because we're exhausted, right? And we're going through this crazy experiment. But like there were moments where it's like, all right, like let's all have a cheers, let's have a toast. There's a lot of sentimental things that happened that I really think would hit home with audience. And even if they just put it into like a teaser video, right? Like a hype video, I think it would blow people away of just how organic and authentic that people are. And I wish that they would kind of pull the veil back just a little bit, right? Like the show's been out now for 6 seasons. People know enough about what's going on, and they also are never going to know the full extent. So that would be one takeaway. It was just really highlighting, right, the camaraderie on both sides. I think the second, I would say, probably more of the like getaway trips, like the excursions that we went on.
Sure.
Like if I recall, and it's been so long since I watched the season for season 1, like they barely highlighted it. It was like, oh, here's Giannina and Damien on a boat for a minute. There's no lead up. Like there were so many funny things that would happen, like when we'd see each other right before we go on dates. Mark and Jessica, like they went horseback riding. It was like a 10-minute process just for them to get on their horses. Like there's so many things, right, like that they could have shown as just funny, odds and ends stuff. But yeah, nothing really sticks out as like I wish that they had put in there. But yeah, just those little things I think would actually, get you closer to just the general audience. That's my opinion.
And speaking of getting close, next we have, I think, Amy and Johnny again.
Okay.
Jordan, what were your thoughts on meeting the fam, meeting Amy's dad?
Yeah, well, we talked briefly about it earlier, but yeah, I mean, it was really heartfelt. It was a really sweet moment. I know we got to meet Amy's mom later at the dress shopping. Both of her parents seem really great, very sweet people. Not much to say other than it's a nice heartwarming moment every time they're on the screen. So,
yes.
What do you think, Kenny?
Pretty similar responses, Jordan. They're steady Eddie, right? They're consistent. This is where it's getting to a point where, and everyone that's watched all the previous seasons, and obviously the way that Kelly and I were shown, like it could go 50-50. Like it's either they're just going through the process and they're gonna, part ways when it's all said and done. That's totally fine. I would have respect for them either way. But yeah, I mean, there's just no surprises with them. They're about as consistent gets for the season.
I thought it was such a moment. I don't get emotional a lot over the shows anymore because we've seen so much at this point. But when he asked her dad permission for his blessing to marry Amy, I just melted, because you don't really see, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen with other couples, but we don't really get to see that. We don't really get to see the behind the scenes unless there's a big issue that needs to be addressed with the parents. So I thought that was very, very sweet. And like you guys said, not much else going on there. Very safe couple.
That's a really good point, though, because regardless of what was really going on, right, and conversations that were off camera, as much as production wants to capture everything, that was always their tagline. It's like, no, like film that. Like, I can't film everything, right? Like, I can't say all this stuff on camera. Like, there's some things I'm just not going to say. But I wanted to give a shout out to Johnny for that, because regardless of, maybe it was something they encouraged him, like, oh, this would be a normal thing that you would ask, based off of the situation, because that's highly plausible, right? Like, that could have happened too. But the way he presented it seemed very genuine and very intentional. So I've been impressed with him. He just seems like a gentle guy. Yeah. It seems like he's just very, very well put together, and he cares about her regardless of if they get married or not. Right. Seems like he's very caring. So it's been good.
If anyone's on the show for the right reasons, whatever you clarify that on, I think Johnny and Amy are that couple this season.
Definitely. From what we can tell. And then
what we think,
on the other end of the spectrum, because I know we have to talk about it, is this whole big fight with Chelsea and Jimmy, because we've been leading up to it since week 1. The first 6 episodes released, and then now we finally gotten to it, and I felt like it was a little bit anticlimactic. Of course, I am like team Chelsea, like in general. I'm really fighting hard for her because I think she's really getting a really bad edit.
Yeah.
Did you know ahead of time, after like seeing the previews, Kenny, that it was probably when she's talking about effing someone, that it was like a past issue and not something that happened during filming? Because I got that vibe.
I got the vibe as well. And it really is just like kind of reading into the clues that are already there. It's like, it would be really like, there would be very little chance that actually happened with someone that was on the cast that got brought back in. So that being Jess, like, I just felt like there's no way. So, they're doing their best to make it as dramatic as possible. And so to Jordan,
they're doing a great job.
Hey, I told Vince and Julian this, and they've gone through it, right? But like, they have gotten so good. They, as in Kinetic and production. Like, you're basically playing chess against someone, right? You're playing chess against a master when you literally just bought a chessboard at Target. Right. Like, it's like, hey, I got the instruction in front of me. Like, they are so far ahead, right, with what they're doing. And that is a scary thing to think about, but it's the reality. But it's still tough, though, because going through the experiment, Jordan, like, I've met Chelsea. She was super friendly. Like, she is about as true, right, to like who you could be as what the show, portrays, also as she is in real life. So like, I give her that. But you just don't know how people react in moments when you are getting filmed. So like, it's just like, really take a step back and try to picture where, that's any scene when like he comes home, right, and they're trying to reconcile their differences. The door is shifting so far where it's like, all right, like any normal couple, this is probably it, right? Like, if you've only dated for, for like 30 days this time, like, you're probably not going to stay together. Like, if he's going out and truly, hanging out with friends, partying, didn't invite you, and you truly, weren't invited, and, he comes home the next day and it's like, oh, nothing happened. Like, that wouldn't fly. And maybe that's just, it wouldn't fly in my household with me and my wife. But that's where it's tough, because you feel terrible for how, she's been edited. You also were feeling really bad for how Jimmy was getting edited. And then like somehow, some way, right, they like reconcile and they're fine.
Right.
So I've got a prediction, and then this is based off of just what I've seen. Like, I don't know if they were actually in it truly in the experiment. I think it's partially like, hey, we're doing this, we have to go to the altar. So it's just a lot of like, oh, well, Jimmy, you went out and drank with, friends, last night. Let's talk about that. And then, Chelsea, like, what were you doing? Oh, I stayed home. It's like, all right, well, like, did he invite you? No. All right, well, let's make this a thing. Because like read the context clues. Like Jimmy, he doesn't really react, right? He seems like he just doesn't want to engage in it. So it's like, let me just diffuse the situation. Like, I love you, babe. And I explain that to my wife a lot, right? It's like there's a lot of things that even I said, like you use the L word. You're in a dating relationship that's being filmed. So there is like a shade of acting. I hate to say that, but like there is a shade of acting because
it's good to know
like what you're going through. Like, I always challenge people if like you can put yourself in that spot, how would you react when you're basically like, there is an expectation from production. They're like, hey, we need to get something from this. So what are you going to do? Are you going to, because you can't step away, right? You can't walk away because they're going to film you one way or another. So I'll always try to throw that in there now. It's like, it's tough to understand really what's going on.
And I will say, in fairness to Chelsea, it seems like if they did egg her on, she was pretty drunk. It wasn't a good time to have that conversation.
Yeah.
I think it played on a lot of her insecurities. But I did see a clip from Nick Viall's podcast that just said that Jimmy painted himself as a homebody. And it seems to be the opposite case where he's talking about wanting to go out all the time and be out with his friends. And so I don't think they're a good match lifestyle wise anyway, because she just seems to need that constant reassurance. And he's given her a lot, whether it's genuine or not. It looks genuine, but that whole interaction and then him getting spiteful and saying that he's not going to compromise at all going, as it comes to not talking to this friend that he had sex with or whatever, that I don't think was like a genuine thing. It seemed like it was like said in the moment and out of anger.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine, well, I don't know. There's a lot that goes on, like you said, that we don't see. So
yeah, there's a world where like, think about that moment. So what if they had dragged out trying to get footage of this? And like, there's part of it where you just get exhausted. So like his dismissal of that, like that one part, and this is where, intentionality really comes back in the fold, your self-awareness and how intentional you are about every single thing, knowing that like you have to be you have to show up and be present and be your best self. Cause the one thing, which in real life, right, if there was a camera around all of us and then it was produced, we would all look like the worst people in the world.
Sure.
So, like, think about it. Like, even at work, right? You get on a conference call, you get off a conference call, and you're just exhausted. Like, if you filmed every single part of that, it's like that's where Jimmy, like, yeah, he seems like he's being dismissive, and he's just like, oh, I don't really care about that. It could be a part of it's like 3 hours of them talking about the same thing over and over again, and she's hitting them with the same sob story, and it's like, I'm not going to compromise on that. Like, I'm not going to talk about that because it could have been just that, right? It's like we've talked about this now for 3 hours. I got nothing else to get. Yeah.
And Nick did mention that they would sometimes make them relive these fights and they were over it already. And then they get worked up again because they're getting right back into it. So I can see why sometimes people are leaving the apartment. Maybe it's not even to get away from your partner. Maybe it's just to get away from the cameras and have some peace.
It's pretty much your only place, right? Your only safe space, because you have to find it, whether you can do it right when you're going through it, or if you truly need like a physical separation just for a moment. Yeah, it's wild. Like I kicked it off. I mean, I probably haven't said anything that's that hadn't been said by other cast members before, but like everyone's got their.
Oh no, you definitely have.
It's just I try to provide a different framework, right? Because like, yes, the show is, as far as reality TV goes, it's completely different. And it is as authentic and organic as it could possibly be. And that comes from talking to other people that have been on their shows, right? Like there are like Bachelor, Bachelorette, I don't even have to go there. Like everyone knows that it's about as scripted gets. And sure, like there's things that happen because you're in a controlled environment. And you're basically you have undivided attention for the person that you're trying to pursue. Throw some alcohol in there, right? And then there's your drama. I mean, it's been done before. So yeah, Love is Blind, I think, is getting to that point where they're kind of hitting their stride. And now it's just, let's see who we can, put in a position to stoke a little bit, and we'll capitalize on that, and we'll put it out there for people to watch.
And this is the same team that does Married at First Sight, which is on season like 927. So they know what they're doing.
They're, like I said, they're masters in chess. Yeah, Chris Colin, I have nothing but respect for him as far as like a professional, but he scares the living crap out of me. Like he's just not someone. He's not someone that I would want to cross paths with. Like it's just, I have no interest. Wish him the best. He's phenomenal at what he does, but yeah, he's a scary guy.
Okay, Jordan, what have you got?
All right, we have a quick little conversation between AD and Clay where it seems like Clay is sort of hinting at maybe not being ready to get married, kind of hinting towards, maybe we say no at the altar, but then we continue to explore things afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And AD is kind of like, no, I'm not going to do that, pretty much.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time we've seen addressed that somebody very clearly says there is no chance of us dating if we do not get married. That's it.
It's the first.
Do you feel like that was an option?
No. And I think there's a lot that can, I think contribute to that. I think it's one, they know that they've got some options as far as this cast versus previous. And again, like, I think that's the way it should be. Like, I honestly, in hindsight, I wish that we had the same, privilege to reference. Like we had nothing to base it off of. So we're just like, all right, like, I think I'm making the best decision I can. But to talk about that moment, like that's the first ultimatum, so to speak, I think that we've seen on the seasons. Who knows, right, what root causes led to that, but I think it's actually a healthy response. It's not pressure.
Yeah.
The pressure is already there, right? Like you already signed up to go on the show. You made it through. You found a match. The pressure is like, hey, you're going to see this thing through. If they truly are, if they've been true to the experiment and it's an organic relationship, I actually support her saying that, because if you don't remain committed within that experiment and for how serious it really is, because just look at how much resources are applied to it. Like you are propped up to be a success story. And I referenced that with Lauren and Cameron from season 1. Like if you truly invest in that person because of the circumstances, there's no reason, right, if it's a true match, that you can't make it. So if she feels that way and he's just kind of getting cold feet, which that can happen in the real world too, if you're not going to say yes now, then you're never going to say yes, right? Like if they're that close and they have that bond, that's my opinion. But yeah, I think that's good on her to say, like, you know what, I think you're letting your second guessing kind of come to mind with things that have happened that are not in your control, which is his family dynamic. And so if he says, that there's going to be something where, if he says no during the experiment, as this, unfolds, it's going to be something he's got to figure out down the road. His next relationship, hopefully he, benefits from this as a learning experiment, because, if you can't say yes in this moment and you have a partner, right, that's actually a legitimate partner and they're being honest with you about it, it's going to be really easy to say no in other situations.
I can see that. And I think that's a good point with them. But I did always wonder, what is to stop anybody from agreeing to say no, or one person say no at the altar, and then just living their normal lives and dating like another couple in the world after the show is over? Yeah.
Yeah. I know that happens more so with people that are in, like the love triangles, as they like to reference.
Okay.
I know that's happened. It's got to be at least, 1 or 2 couples per season. It's like, hey, we didn't, get showcased, or like it didn't work out. They exit. And honestly, there were 2 couples that got engaged on our season that they never showcased. And so they actually dated longer than like a lot of people that were showcased, like, in the real world. It's like, all right, like we'll try this out. So yeah, like you really don't know, how that shakes out. But yeah, it's tough, right? Like you try to put yourself in someone's shoes, but everyone's life is different. Every person's different. So how you navigate things, and in this case with production and cameras all in front of you, there's a lot more distraction going on too, right? So it's like it's easy to look at it and be like, oh, like I would have done it this way, but you don't know their relationship with that person. You don't know the stuff that they've gone through, right? Whether it's their family background or if it's stuff that previous relationships. You referenced trauma earlier. Like there's traumas, right, and triggers that come up, and honestly, when you're in that fast-paced environment of filming, you really don't have time to address it. So you just kind of let me park that there. Let me focus on what the task at hand is.
Yeah.
And get through it. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Who's
and
next?
then, okay, yeah. But just to wrap up, because I just want to wrap up this episode 10 since we're still on episode 10. We finally get to this.
I talk a lot. I'm sorry.
No, it's not you.
You have given us so much insight that we did not know and things
There's
to
so much to
consider.
break down too.
Mm-hmm.
But we finally get to this cast party, this barbecue.
Oh yeah.
Which, by the way, may be my favorite setting for one of these that we've ever had. I thought it looked so pretty.
Okay.
I really want to go there.
Agreed. Lake Norman's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. So we finally get to see this anticipated meetup with Jimmy and Jess, and we get to see I guess this is kind of the first time that we're for sure seeing Laura and Jeremy being split, like confirmation that they're split at this little party.
I don't even think, it didn't seem like they knew. Is that something you think? Right.
It's speculation. So yeah, if anyone from Kinetic or Netflix is watching it, I'm speculating. I have no information. I have no intel, right, to contribute to this. But I think there's as good of a chance that, going back to what I referenced earlier, they kind of pit you against each other. So it's like, oh, is Jeremy going to be there, right? To Laura, oh no, like we couldn't get a hold of him.
Oh, God.
But by the
no.
right, all the while, like they did, and so they kind of flipped the same story. It's like, oh, Laura's not going to come; she has no interest. Okay, fine, so I'll show up. So that's a chance, like that could have happened, and so that's why her honest reaction was like, okay, here we go, right? Like, of course, and again, you're stuck because here you are, you're mic'd up, you don't want to cause any more drama, but you kind of roll with the punches. So I mean, I could see that's how that happened, whereas like neither of them had any interest to be physically around each other, but productions, they're good at what they do, so they're salespeople for sure.
It sounds like a haunted house. Like you just don't know. Something's coming, but you don't know where it's coming from or what's going to happen.
Yeah, well, that's what Vince and I aligned on that a lot. Where I'm a very drama-free person. I think it's a byproduct of like I grew up with two sisters. That was enough drama between them. So like I sat back a lot. I very much have middle child syndrome too. So like I don't need a lot of attention. I'm fine to just park it on the sideline and watch it unfold, and I'll interject when I need to. But I'm more of I'm a moderator, right? Like I come in and just make peace with people. But Vince and I talked about that a lot because it's like, you know what? I'm just going to show up, enjoy the barbecue, have some food, and I'll let them, if they want to be dramatic, like let all the other cast members be dramatic, and I'll be there to watch it.
And it was so much drama, especially the way things are cut. There was this conversation with Jess and Jimmy where she says, I want you, long pause, to be good to her. And where's that going? Is she going to confess her love and try and steal him away and pull a Sarah Ann? But no, just maybe some production tricks.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you mentioned, you kind of touched on this a little bit. They also ask, sometimes, I have to be careful how to word this. They have a way of
allegedly.
They have a way of asking similar questions, right? Framing topics of conversation and questions very similarly, but it happens multiple times. So like they're waiting to get the best answer, right, for what the shock and awe value is. So yeah, like they very much could have already had that conversation, right, between Jimmy and Jess 30 minutes prior when they were around other people. But then it's okay, like let's make the rotations. It's kind of like speed dating, right? Like if you went to a restaurant, like some people were at the charcuterie table, some people were over at the fireplace. Like they kind of put you in different settings and environments with different people, but they'll ask similar questions. Like, oh, y'all should talk about this, and then they film it. So that's where you can't say that it's not real, and you can't say it's not organic, but yeah, like this has kind of already been captured. You guys are just trying to get a better tagline out of it.
Sure. Do
No.
you think, because it felt to us, Jordan, maybe you'll agree, like once Jimmy heard that Jess had a daughter, that was no longer his number one, but he did tell Jess that she was his number one. Do you feel like that was genuine? Do you feel like it was a little produced? Do you agree with the kid assessment?
Oh man. Like I said, I'm very intentional. So I don't want to pretend like I know what Jimmy was processing, but one, if I was on the experiment currently, and you're dating someone that has a kid, it's very admirable to, in that situation, to be like, oh, 100%, like I'll step in and I'll be a father, right, to a kid that's not mine. And there's people that do that in the real world, right? Day in, day out. Like, and that's an amazing thing. When you're on a reality TV show, yeah, I would say that would be a huge deterrent. I'll just speak for myself. So that 100% probably contributed to it. And especially if you look at it through his lens, where it's like, all right, I have two people that I really enjoy talking to, but one doesn't have a kid. Great conversations, right? Seems like things are going places, and she's fun. Second has a kid. She, as he has said, like, she scares the crap out of him, right? She's the smartest person he's ever known. Like, so it's like, all right, so am I going to sign up for a structured relationship? Which, if you're a mature man, right, and you're looking for that, then 100%. If you're wanting to kind of see the experiment and be a part of maybe something that's a little bit more lively and fun, post filming, then Chelsea's probably the option. So I don't know if I don't know if Jimmy thought that way, right? I would be hard pressed to think that he didn't. Just because, again, like if you signed up for the show, regardless of what your intentions are, what you tell people they are, you do know at this point that Love is Blind is going to get attention. So it's like, if you're looking at it that way, what decision you're going to make? You're going to go with someone that's going to be more fun and gives you a better chance to go through the experiment, or are you going to go with someone that's like, all right, we're going to get out of the experiment, and by no means, right, having a kid, and Jess seems like she's a phenomenal mother. That's just a different responsibility.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
I would say it would be unbelievable if that did not contribute to his decision in the pods.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll talk to Jimmy about it later, though.
Yeah, let us know what he says, because we're still waiting on that go ahead from Paria to be able to chat with the main cast too. We've talked to Vince, obviously, but we're waiting for the go ahead for anybody else. Paria, let us know.
Shout out Paria. I used to talk to her often. Yeah, she's so nice. I love spending time with her. Yeah.
Doing the work of a crew of 20, trying to hold it down.
I don't know how she balanced it. Yeah, she was like basically like everyone's emotional support dog. Just there for you. So even if you didn't have like an actual question, she would just come stand by you. Like, you good? Yeah, I'm good. We'll make through it.
And it really means a lot to us that she even acknowledged our existence and helped hook us up with Vince, because we're not we're not TMZ. We're just the Love Pod trying to get our footing. So we appreciate it when when you guys help us out. It really means a lot. Yeah.
No. Well, I mean, again, thank y'all for just, inviting me on. I mean, it's been great to talk with y'all, and obviously love what y'all did with Vince, and I'm sure it's going to be a success for y'all one way or another.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Jordan, any final lake party thoughts before we roll on over?
Right. Well, I think most of the drama is going to be starting episode 11. So, obviously we have like a few different conversations that happen during this episode. Yeah. It's like actually kind of a lot of important conversations. I feel like things we've been leading up to happening during this whole party thing. So I would just like starting with obviously Sarah Ann arriving to the party obviously brings in some tension. But we have a few minutes. We kind of get to see Chelsea and Trevor sit down and have a conversation first.
That's a whole other episode.
That could be a whole series, just the four of them and what's going to go on in their relationships and their conversations. We are going to take a quick break before we get into those. Kenny, do you have time to hang out with us for episode 11 or do you have to get going? Okay,
no,
awesome. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. We just wanted to separate this for the podcast because we know we chat a lot. So we're going to go on to part 2 for episode number 11, Roller Coaster of Love.
And that's the end of our recap of episode 10 of Love is Blind Season 6 with special guest Kenny Barnes. Thanks for listening to the Love Pod. Make sure you check for episode 11 where we talk about and recap episode 11 of Season 6 of Love is Blind. If you want to continue the conversation, join our Love is Blind fan page on Facebook. The link is in the show notes.